Okay, good.
Hi everyone, we're having some technical difficulty. We'll be starting in part 2.
Okay, I'm happy to start, Lara.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Melissa. I'll be your host for tonight. Apologies about the technical difficulties, and thank you for joining the session for the Tools and Techniques microclass. Before we start, I'd like to remind you about the summit and go through the few rules and some other bits. Okay, the summit will be from the 3rd to the 5th of October, 2022. Location will be in Hilton, Sandton. The format of the summit will be, there will be one workshop and there will be 2 conference days. The theme is Thriving in the Next Normal. To register for the summit, you can go to www.basummit.co.za. I will encourage you to go and register and attend the session. Okay, to go on to some rules. Please stay on mute unless you are cleared to talk. Please switch off your video. Only the presenter's video is allowed. The presentation will be 45 minutes long. You may post your questions in the main chat. We will read them to the presenter in the time for Q&A session. Presentation will be uploaded on the IIBASA YouTube page, which will be found on this link. Unfortunately, we do not send out presentation deck. If you would like to present a tool or technique to the community like Gavin, please contact us on devin@southafrica.iiba.org. To become a member of the IIBASA, please go to this link. Then you can be able to join and be a member. What are the benefits of being an IIBA member? You will have access to the online library featuring 11,000 plus titles, and you will have access to member exclusive webinars. You will have access to PDF publications, articles, industry papers, and reports. There are opportunities to connect to other members at local or international conferences and chapter events. You will have exclusive access to the global community of BAs, educators, thought leaders, mentors, and coaches. And you can save up to 40% on globally recognized professional certificates. And you get discounts on conferences. So I will encourage you to be a member of the IIBA. Okay, so let's get on to the business of the day. So our presenter for tonight is Gavin van der Merwe. He is presenting on the topic root cause analysis through a detective lens. So this talk will follow a detective BA who will compare how root cause analysis tools and techniques are similar to those detectives use when performing investigations. Gavin is an industrial engineer who found his passion for business analysis while solving problems on vehicle manufacturing lines. He has 7 years of working experience. He's a founder of 2 BA co-ops. He loves sharing and learning with others that are passionate about business analysis. His mantra is, which is very nice, communication, align, change, repeat. So enjoy the presentation, and over to you, Gavin. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Melissa. I appreciate that. And thanks everybody for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. Right, I'm quickly going to start my presentation. Just give me a shout if you can see.
We can see. Thank you.
Great. Awesome. Thank you very much, Melissa. All right. Welcome, everybody. As Melissa said, my topic tonight is on root cause analysis. I've tried to put a little bit of a different spin on it. So to try and give a little bit of a different perspective to root cause analysis than what we usually find with root cause analysis. And I like to do things from a little bit of a different perspective, as I'm sure most people do in business analysis, to actually improve our thought patterns a little bit. So let's get going with a root cause analysis through a detective's lens. All right, so first off, I want to start with what is root cause analysis, and what better place to find a definition than the BABOK. All right, so the BABOK defines this as a structured examination of an identified problem to understand the underlying causes. So I just want to stop here for 1 second that we really look at this sentence that the BABOK provides us with. If we look at synonyms from thesaurus.com around what identified actually is, it lists a few: analyze, classify, describe, determine, diagnose, establish, find, name, and pinpoint. So a lot of these let you actually start thinking a lot about the whole topic of root cause analysis if you listen to what that identified really encapsulates. And the second word that I've highlighted here is causes. And I think that's a very important one to just pause on for 1 second. Is it's in plural form. So that's a critical thing that we need to touch on when doing root cause analysis. And I will touch on that as we go through the presentation. So who are we going to be following through our presentation? So I'm going to introduce our BA that's going to take us through the root cause analysis through a detective's lens. So when she gets called on to do root cause analysis, our BA becomes Detective BA. And we're going to follow her along in her journey for a root cause analysis. All right, so Detective BA, what makes her such a good root cause analysis detective? So we're first going to have a look at some of her character traits. So Detective BA is curious. She likes to dig deeper into a lot of problems. She is determined. So root cause analysis can be tough, but she's very persistent to actually get to the problem. She's always keenly aware of bias, not just bias in herself, but picking up a bias in her stakeholders and subject matter experts when she's actually going through a root cause analysis initiative that she's then busy with. She's always got a willingness to communicate, even with difficult stakeholders. A lot of the times when there's a problem at hand, people might get grumpy, but that's usually just because they're not being heard. And that's what makes a willingness to communicate so important. She wants to solve problems for good, not just to patch them up. That's a critical aspect of root cause analysis. And she does not jump to conclusions. It's very easy to jump to a conclusion with root cause analysis, but a lot of the times that's when you're just going to be patching up the problem. So when it feels too easy, it probably is. She also builds trust, which is absolutely critical. Building trust with root cause analysis is a great way as a BA to actually gain trust within your organization. It shows your problem-solving skills, and that's why it is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that you can do as a business analyst. She's also an IIBA member, and that keeps her up to date with all of the latest trends. All right, let's start with solving a problem, not patching it. So here, as I mentioned earlier, many people will jump at patching a problem. This shows that you can solve a problem really quickly, but it might erode trust in time if it comes out that the way that you've solved the problem didn't really solve it, just patched it up for a little bit. So over to everybody's favorite question, well, all BAs, why? So we want to start here with a single why. This is not the first why in the 5 whys. This is why is this a problem? It's very important to understand this. We need to understand why the problem is a problem. There's very seldomly a silver bullet as well in root cause analysis. So when you think you have the answer, start looking from a different perspective to see if that really is where the root cause is lying. And then finally, you need to make sure that your cause and effect cycle makes sense. And we'll get to this, and spoiler, the 5 whys and this come right at the end. Right, so let's get investigating a bit with Detective BA. There's a few steps we're going to go through with Detective BA, and I'll list them out here, and then we'll dig into these in a little bit more detail. So the first is we want to examine the scene. The second thing we want to do is to do interviews. We want to go through a process of elimination, and we'd like to do some interrogations. Right, so let's get over to actually examining the scene. So first off, can you access the scene is very, very important. If you are a detective and you cannot actually access the scene where there's a crime, you are not going to be able to solve that problem, and you're not going to be able to solve the case. So you need to make sure that you've got that proper access. And I'll get through to a bit of a example right at the end where we'll revisit these slides and see how Detective BA actually went through this process. You then need to look for fingerprints and evidence while you're at the scene. And you want to look, feel out, you want what looks or feels out of place at the scene. A lot of the times, this will be our intuition that talks to us. Right, next, what we would like to do in a root cause analysis initiative is we want to do interviews. This is absolutely critical, where we want to actually start getting all of that information from the people that know what's going on in the business, and then be able to put it together. So in our interviews, we really want to interview our witnesses and subject matter experts, just like what a detective would. If you've ever watched CSI, they're always talking to the witnesses, and they're always talking to subject matter experts that pertain to that particular event. What questions do we ask? And again, this is some of our favorite questions to ask as business analysts. We want to ask why, who, what, when, where, how many, or how often. Next, we want to go over to our process of elimination. So this is to figure out what's really the root cause of the problem that we are dealing with. So this is an extract out of the Babcock version 3 that just shows us an example of a fishbone diagram. But another diagram that doesn't get used very often, or matrix, excuse me, is for process of elimination is or is not. And this is where you can use that information that you gathered in your interviews and put it into your fishbone diagram or into your is not matrix. And this is where you want to look at things like who is or is not involved in the root cause, what is or is not, where, when, how many, much, or often are the things that we would like to look at in an is or is not matrix. This also helps that you can put your thought patterns together clearly and make sure that you are looking at this and you're going through a good process of elimination. Interrogations. We don't interrogate people. We don't blame humans as the root cause. This is an extremely important thing when doing root cause analysis. As soon as the blame game starts, it becomes extremely difficult to actually find the root cause. People become defensive, and the same thing happens when detectives try to solve a crime. If they just go into an area and start interrogating people and trying to put blame or to force people to tell them a specific piece of information around what happened, people are going to start closing up, and the exact same thing happens in business. And I'm sure a lot of people have seen this in their day-to-day lives as business analysts. This is the human element to any problem is extremely important. What do we interrogate? We interrogate systems, data, processes, training material, equipment. Right, so now we want to stop and we want to get solving. This is now where we can actually start asking why. So this is where we would like to now start performing the 5 whys analysis and see if that then makes sense to us. But how do we make sure that the 5 why is actually making sense for the root cause that we are trying to solve? We do this by looking at a cause and effect. And this takes up 5 whys and it turns it around, and we start asking, because what's our last why? Why is that why? And then therefore going up the ladder. And I'll get to a bit of an example on this one when we go over to the actual solving of one of these root cause analysis problems. Okay, so that's just a quick introduction into how Detective BA goes about solving problems for root cause analysis. And now I'll go over and we can actually, let's solve a problem with Detective BA. Right, I just want to quickly have a look. Sorry, everybody. Okay, so let's follow Detective BA along with one of these problems. So what is the problem that we're looking at? This is a modified problem of a real world root cause analysis, just in case anybody is wondering. An incorrect data entry was picked up on a system. A stock manifest shows a pallet of oak planks in a stockyard. However, only pine planks were produced for the past 2 weeks. Now we want to ask ourselves, firstly, why is this a problem? Sorry, everything's blocking my view. Why is this a problem? This is if the stock manifest is incorrect, the reports that are used to make sales and predictions will be inaccurate, and business will make incorrect decisions. And this can lead to major losses within the business. So let's go back to the process that through the different slides that we saw that Detective BA goes through to actually do root cause analysis and see how she went about solving this problem. Firstly, Detective BA examines the scene. Can she access the scene? So Detective BA already has access to query the database of the affected system. She, however, doesn't have access to the stockyard, so she requests access so that she can physically go and look at the pallet that was affected for this problem. She then goes and looks for fingerprints and evidence. She notices that the pallet was scanned by scanner 4N, and she also then queries the audit logs, and they show her that that pallet was actually scanned 5 times. What looks or feels out of place for Detective BA? So using her intuition here, something about the label just feels off, but she can't really place it. Next, Detective BA goes over to the interview stage. Who is she going to interview? Her witnesses and her subject matter experts. She has decided to talk to the stockyard manager, one of the stockyard workers who does the scanning, the system DBA, as well as the sales admin. In the interviews, she asks the 5 W's and the 1 H. And let's see what findings she got out of this. So firstly, she asks why. No one is really sure what it could be. Ooh. The stockyard worker also mentions, when she's asking the who question, the label printer company, which wasn't mentioned by anybody else, and it wasn't in any of the documentation that she is aware of. What? When asking what, this just highlights the problem more. The answers that she gets from everybody just goes back to that this is an issue, but nobody actually knows what is the problem. When did it happen? It happened on the 15th of March, 2022. Where did it happen? A lot of answers came through with this, but most of them were focused on either the system or the stockyard. So nobody's really sure where it occurred. She then also asks how many or how often. It was also then confirmed by the stockyard worker that this has happened before. When asking the manager about this, the manager confirmed that it has happened before, but they couldn't find out why, and they just went and corrected the data entry in the database without correcting any root cause. She then decides to do a process of elimination for her of a is or is not matrix for this problem. So firstly, she wants to find out who. Who would we look at the is or is not for this problem? Is we can see that who was the night shift crew, who was it not? The day shift crew. What is, it was an incorrect wood type. What was it not? The cut of the wood was correct. It was all planks, both of them. It was the pine oak wood type that actually got mixed up in the stockyard. Where did it occur? The physical occurrence of this happened within the stockyard. It did not happen in production or shipping. When did it happen? It happened on the 15th of March, 2022, but during her interviews, she also saw that it happened on the 12th of January, 2021. When is it not? All other dates at this stage. How much, many, or often was another question that she's going through in the process of elimination. With the evidence she currently has, it seems like it's happening about once a year. So this is not a singular event. This is just a simple example of an is or is not matrix around how you can go through it to actually eliminate certain areas where you then can make sure that you can get more of a focus about where are you going to conduct your investigation. Next, she went over to interrogations. What do we do when we interrogate? So she actually went and had a look at the data from the 12th of January 2021, where the problem occurred previously, and this showed her that it was day shift. So this shows that what she was doing in the is not matrix before was incorrect assumption that it only happens in night shift. So this has happened in both. So the chance that it's actually one of the shifts that might have made the mistake has become lower. She also went and had a look at the processes in the training material that she scrutinized, and she also reviewed the processes within that training material. Now, as it always happens within any root cause analysis or BA initiative, we have an interruption. So try to keep this a simple example, but as close to the real world as possible. So the label printing company finally calls her back, and they confirm that the printers are due for a service, but no one has contacted them, and the number they have on file no longer works. The gut feel about the label comes back. Now she feels she has enough information to actually solve this problem. She heads to the label printing area to compare the other labels there to the photo that she has of the palette that was incorrect, that had incorrect data entry assigned to it. The first few letters look a bit squished to her. That lets her think, but the barcode itself is probably squished too. She queries the database and determines that the barcode is for pine, but it is scanning in as oak. So she has an idea. She compares the two labels and sees that the oak and pine have very similar barcodes, and that the barcode got printed just incorrectly enough to actually look like oak for the scanner. And that is how she figured out where the root cause of this problem is. But is the incorrect printing really the root cause? While doing further analysis on this problem, she's going through her 5 whys. So just to recap on the problem, it was an incorrect data entry was picked up on the system. Stock manifest shows a pallet of oak planks in the stockyard. However, only pine planks were produced for the past 2 weeks. Now it's time for our detective BA to ask the 5 whys. Also, please note the 5 whys is just a guideline to say that you need to ask why more than once. Sometimes it will be less than 5, sometimes it will be more. Sometimes your whys will actually start branching out into multiple branches to look like a pyramid. That's usually what will happen when you're solving a real life scenario. So why did we have the problem? The palette scanned in as oak instead of pine. Why did this happen? The barcode image was slightly incorrectly printed. Why? The printers are due for a service. Why? No one knows who must action this. Why? There is no printer maintenance process in place. So nobody has actually taken the time to know, when does this happen? There's no processes in place for this, so it's something that's slipping through, and it's probably the same cause that caused the previous error that was similar to this. But let's first stop there and make sure, is this making a logical sense? So this is where we want to, this is where we would like to do our cause and effect. So let's take it up from the bottom upwards to see how our cause and effect looks, and does it make sense to us? So there's no printer maintenance process in place because no one knows who must action it. Therefore, printers are due for a service. Therefore, the barcode image was slightly incorrectly printed. Therefore, the palette scanned in as an oak instead of pine, and therefore we reach our problem. So we can see that our cause and effect also makes sense because we don't have a process in place, because when processes were being drawn up, nobody actually mentioned this process because nobody knew whose responsibility it was to do this. And that is how our detective BA reached a root cause for a problem that was posed to her. So thank you very much, everybody. That's my quick presentation for tonight on root cause analysis through a detective's lens. I hope this was informative. And if there's any questions, everybody's welcome to post them.
Thanks, Gavin. That was very informative and very practical. It felt very like something that I'm used to. So now I'm going to hand over to Debs for questions and answers.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Mel. Thank you so much, Gavin. That was very, very brilliant, very succinct too.
a lot of questions on my mind, but I would let the participants ask their questions. I can't see. Okay, I think in the Q&A, there is a question from Tejas. Tejas is asking, how do we use the knowledge areas in the BABOK to help, to know where to help developers and testers? For testers and developers, how do they use the knowledge area in the BABOK, to guide them? I don't know within what context now, but is there a way that the knowledge area of business analysis can help or guide developers and testers?
I think that's going to completely depend on the knowledge area that you're looking at within the BABOK. Root cause analysis is, when I was doing my research on this, mentioned 67 times in the BABOK version 3. So it's coming across in many of those knowledge areas. So what I would do with that is actually go and have a look at your knowledge area and how the BABOK says your different tools and techniques fit into this, to have a look at how that then actually tells you where it fits into that knowledge area, how it fits in there, and then that's where you'll be able to make a bit of an assumption around how you can help your developers and testers with that. So I think with the context I've got there, I hope that that helps.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Tejas, I hope that helps. Please post more questions if you want us to delve deeper into your question, or if you think we haven't addressed it as much as you would like us to. Gavin, there's a question here that I don't really get, but I would try and, paraphrase it. The Anonymous is asking, is there a root cause analysis? Do you think, however, that root cause analysis can be done by someone other than a business analyst in the dev team?
Yeah, root cause analysis can be done by anybody. I think root cause analysis is just if you very much have those character traits that we were looking at right in the beginning of the detective BA, anybody that's got a curious mind and really wants to dig into really solve a problem, and as I said, not just patch it up, that means anybody can do it. I mean, I wasn't a business analyst my whole life. I started out as an industrial engineer, and that's where I actually started with root cause analysis. It's one of the things that made me find out about business analysis and that's what one of the things that actually got me excited about business analysis was one of those was actually doing root cause analysis. So I think anybody can do root cause analysis. If you're curious enough, you can actually find it. It's root cause analysis is more about knowing where to look and being determined to solve the problem than what it is about having a very strong technical skill set. You can always ask people for the technical information that you need. If you yourself cannot write the SQL query to query a database, you can ask people to do that. If you don't understand the process mapping that somebody might have mapped the process in, if they are using some type of special process mapping, then you can always ask somebody to try and explain that to you, to just get the idea to point you in the right direction.
Thank you so much, Gavin. That was brilliant. We have a question from Rashid. Rashid wants to know, does root cause analysis play a bigger role in incident management or in problem management?
I think it's both. I think it's going to completely depend on where you're at. So where it's great for incident management was very much almost like the example that I showed now. That's where you've got a single incident, but using the information that you captured in that incident to actually go over and put that in a problem management process or document, or put something together there. That's where your fishbone diagram becomes extremely important. I've used those a few times when I was actually doing handover of project to say, this is where we've picked up where problems have occurred in the past. And it's a great place to then go back to when there is an incident that occurs. So I think problem management is something that will, if done well, will help incidents in the future be solved a lot faster, because you'll know how the structure of your systems and your processes are put together.
Thank you so much, Gavin. I hope that answers your question, Rashid. We have another question. Is there a root cause analysis document, a reference point where we can see things about, like the fishbone diagram and get more information when we need them?
Well, of course, the first place I'd start with a BABOK. That gives you a good overview around business analysis, but going back to the previous question, also shows you where it actually fits into your different business analysis knowledge areas. So when and where you're actually applying root cause analysis, that to me is the really important thing that comes out of the BABOK. For the rest of the stuff, there's a lot of information online. There's a lot of courses on Udemy, on LinkedIn Learning. When I was working as an industrial engineer before becoming a BA, there's a software company called Taproot that writes excellent articles on their website. It's mostly focused on their piece of software, but there's very, very good information captured within those. But I think those will be the best places to actually have a start. But to get you going for a BA, start with a BABOK and then get curious and start looking from there.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Gavin. And guys, if you, one of the perks that you get from being a high BA member is you get access to the BABOK guide, to the most recent version of the BABOK guide. You would never go wrong with that as your Bible. Okay. Thank you, Rashid, for your contribution. You mentioned that Gavin talked about bias, and that one of the trick is to understand that there are different perceptions or bias of a scenario, and that as we do root cause analysis, we need to put on different hats. I think we have to note that that we need to put on different hats and look at bias from different perspectives so that we ourselves are not biased. Thank you so much, Rashid. We get that quite well. Zueletu, so sorry, Zueletu. There's a question from Zueletu. Can we use the fishbone technique to help business understand their problems? How do we engage business with root cause analysis?
That's a great question. So I think there what we want to do is, yes, of course, the fishbone techniques will help business understand their problem. But I think the big thing is make sure that when you're doing root cause analysis, I think this is also very much, is it the incident or the problem management that you're trying to solve? Why are they looking for a fishbone diagram is probably the first question you would need to ask. Are you actually solving an active problem, or are you doing it to put it part of a artifact pack that will actually help you to identify problems in the future? So that's where the fishbone diagram does become extremely powerful, is that you can use it not only for incidents, but you can actually use it to actually detect where your problem is coming from a lot sooner if it is something that could be recurring and cannot be completely solved. So this is sometimes where we've got funny processes and the like of that actually pops in place there. So how you go about talking to business about this, especially when there is an active problem, people could be a bit, as I said, grumpy at that stage. And that's usually because people just want to be heard. So understand from their perspective, what is the problem? So understand your audience that you're going to. Is an interview workshop a good idea? Or do you see there is a bit of finger pointing within the business? If you do see that, rather do one-on-one interviews and understand it from people before you try and do a workshop type environment with multiple people. What I found works really well there, if you don't understand exactly what's going on in the business, you have a gut feel as a BA that something is wrong with the process, but the process isn't in place and everybody's blaming everybody else that it's not in place. Give a crack at the process and draw it out as best you understand it from the different interviews you've done. And what I found works really, really well here is make sure that the process that you then present to people does not look like a polished, finished product. What this helps people with is it helps them to ask further questions. People don't like to, when a work has been done, or when a piece of work has been done as it looks polished, people don't like to give input. But when they see it's still a work in progress and they can critique it and see that there is certain things wrong with it. I've done this purposefully at times was to actually put in a wrong step, where that is the catalyst for people to show that that simple step that you got wrong there is incorrect. And that helps people to then say, okay, well, we've detected one problem in the process, maybe there's more. And in that way, then you can build the process out like that.
Thank you so much, Gavin. That is very, very clear. If I get you right, that means you're telling us that you spoke about interviews. That is where you ask questions from humans, from people. And then you spoke about interrogation, where you don't ask human questions, you ask questions from data processes and training materials and even process documents. You know, that means that it could be in iteration, it could be iterative. You can go from interview. Correct. If you're not getting what you want, you move to interrogation and you get back to interview. So it can be quite an iterative process. It doesn't have to be a linear process.
Very, very correct. Yes.
Right.
It is very, I think it's like if you've watched any good detective movie, it's never solved within the first 30 minutes. Otherwise it wouldn't be a movie. So that's, I think, a very, very good way of putting it. But yes, it's very much an iterative process.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Measure wants to know if there's any place where we can get a template for root cause analysis.
There isn't a specific template for it, not that I have found. As I've said, the best place to probably start is the Babok. It gives you a very succinct breakdown around the 5 whys as well as the fishbone diagram. And the rest of it comes down to core soft skills as being a BA. So some of the techniques I highlighted today, but it's very much about being curious and being able to piece disparate pieces of information together. So when you're interrogating systems or you're interviewing people, putting all of that together in a big picture and actually creating context for yourself is very important there. So not specifically that I know of. These are usually things that you would build fit for purpose and aligned with whatever the company's templates are when they actually have these types of manuals. So many companies have these types of manuals for problem management or for their standard operating procedures, and you can then fall in line with that so that it has a bit more of a familiar feel to it when it does get introduced into the business.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Katlego wants to know, is it possible to actually measure how long, it takes to conduct a typical root cause analysis? I know it could be a business one, it could be just a little process, it could be, but plus or minus, can we put a timeline to the process of conducting a root cause analysis?
There is no way to put a timeline to a root cause analysis. I think maybe once you actually have a good problem management document in place, you could cut that time down and actually start tracking there how long it would take, but that would be very, very specific to the scenario and business that you are in. So you might be able to get predictability, and let me put predictability like this in air quotes, once you start tracking the different types of problems. And probably the predictability is going to come down to you getting better and your team that you're working with within the business getting better at actually solving those problems. Because when you start being curious and you solve a problem, it becomes an infectious thing and the rest of the business is going to do the same.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Guys, Ruth has posted a link to the 5Y template on Mirror. Please look into the Q&A. If you would like to just have the templates, you can follow the link. And we'll take some more questions before we run out of time. We have Rashid asking, what is your view on different answers to different stakeholders for the same scenario? For example, there's a detailed root cause analysis at DevOps role versus providing context to business HOD about impact to business, i.e., the management needs to give clients one line with detailed document as backup. Rashid, talk about double-barreled or triple-barreled question. So I might not do well with interpreting your question, but do you have, a perspective on how to answer different stakeholders. I think this is coming from the part where you mentioned that you need to understand the context and know when is the best time to do a workshop, a group workshop versus an individual interview. But given that context, or outside of that context, what is your view on the different answers for different stakeholders for the same scenario?
All right, well, I think the big thing is there, and that's why that was the first thing that I highlighted, and that comes back to the Babok's definition, is it's an identified problem with causes. So it does not mean that if one stakeholder has one answer for the problem and another stakeholder has another one, that they are not, that they're not compatible with one another. It could be that the different viewpoints from them are very compatible. They could very much be speaking about the same thing, but because you're working with a very technical team versus a very mind-oriented, that's where you as the BA need to come in and actually see if those viewpoints actually connect or don't they. And that's where the fishbone diagram becomes extremely important. Is what you can do there is you can actually have your different legs, and the one can actually have a leg on there for your process, and you could have a business perspective as well as a technical perspective on that process leg. And that's where you could see if those two do tie together, and then your tertiary one could actually tie up with one another, but the interpretation with them could be different.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Rashid provided more details. He said, I find that I have to provide a narrative that suits the process of the client instead of being technical. I think that totally aligns with what you have just said now. Thank you so much. Umpo wants to know, can I use a fishbone diagram when working on a website consolidation project? How do I determine the structure?
I think if we're just working on a website consolidation project, are we then looking at being able to put a fishbone together so that we can solve problems easier that arise in future, then yes, of course you can use it. Being prepared for things like this, make sure if there are known problems, especially if you're consolidating different websites. So if we have a website consolidation project, that tells me we're taking multiple applications or multiple websites, multiple systems or DBs. That's what the word consolidation is telling me, and we're putting them together. Now, a lot of the times, and this is especially going to be true in your phase where you are in between your as is and your to be. So that phase where you're moving in between those, that's where it becomes very, very important, because a lot of the technical debt that you might have on these applications or websites or databases that you're trying to consolidate are actually going to start coming to light. And that's where you can actually then find out by the people that are subject matter experts on these different components that you're trying to do, to find out by them where does these problems lie, and then you can try and create a fishbone diagram from there to help understand problems faster when they do arise in that interim period.
Thank you so much, Gavin. Edward asked the question here. I think in 2019, the BA Summit of 2019 in Cape Town, we spoke a lot about strategic BA. That means not just writing user stories and monitoring epics and all of that. This very much speaks to problem solving, which is a core part of being a business analyst. But you find that so many business analysts are focused more on, requirements and user stories and all of that. Do you find that BAs are deserting the BA techniques like, root cause analysis and are focusing more on user story? I'm going to tie that back to the question. Is it a question or maybe a comment that says that when you're doing root cause analysis for a long time, you might find out that the stakeholders just sidetrack you because it's taking too long. So how can we marry that together? How can we, get a balance between being strategic, being able to look into problems and identify the root cause of the problem, and still carrying us on with our epics and user stories and not being sidelined? Because it's taking us too long, and we would rather hire an investigator than get you on the job kind of a scenario.
Look, I think a big thing there is features versus enablers is always a very important thing in my book, aligning whatever you're doing and making sure that what you're implementing works and works well is very important. But a lot of people get caught up in the feature trap. So you just want to write user stories and put those into your different epics so that you can see that you can deliver, but just delivering isn't always the best way to go about something, because you might be delivering something at very high speed, but you're building on top of technical debt. And as soon as you're doing that, it becomes a house of cards that will break down later. And I think that's incredibly important where it comes down to this question that Edward is asking is, do you find BAs are deserting BA techniques or focusing more on user stories? I feel BAs are doing that. But if you really want to make a difference within a company, you need to make sure you are aligned to the strategy, and you need to make sure that you're building enablers. Sometimes slowing down is the right way to do it. If there is a big problem and it's technical debt and it is especially causing recurring problems, that is something, the sooner you fix it, the cheaper that technical debt is to pay back. Technical debt runs interest. And that I cannot overstate enough. You will pay back that debt with interest. And the longer you leave it, the more interest it's going to run. And I've seen this many, many times where it was chasing deadlines, chasing features, just trying to get all of the user stories done. That can lead to a very impressive velocity, but it does not, at the end of the day, always lend itself well to a well-rounded, well-functioning, solid product.
That's very deep, and it's so noteworthy. Thank you so much, Gavin. Thank you so much, Edward. You mentioned that it's interesting how these techniques seem simple, yet they are not utilized. They are so powerful and highly effective. Thanks, Gavin. Coming from Edward Ngubane, our two-time president of IRBA South Africa, and one of the subject matter experts when it comes to business analysis. He says they are powerful and highly effective. And I hope that everyone here today has learned one thing or the other. G. Wilk talks about the MAC, and the importance of data-driven quality strategy for improving processes all the way. Do we have any more questions? I can't see any more questions. I just see comments and contributions about how wonderful this session has been. And we are so grateful to have you. The presentation, Gavin, was very succinct, very straight to the point. And I personally appreciate the fact that you quickly went through the core of your content and run us through an example. And we can, also start thinking about different contexts within our organizations and how to apply this tool and technique. So for me personally, it was a presentation, a session well worth the investment in time. Thank you, Gavin. Thank you so much,
Melissa. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Melissa, for the facilitation. Thank you, Lara, for all the work that you put into getting everything moving. We really appreciate you. And thank you to Kat Lego, the current president of IRBA South Africa, for the platform. Thank you to our participants for your presence. We couldn't have done this without you. We hope that you make a change in your organization, and that as you continue to attend the Tools and Techniques evening, you get more tools in your toolbox, and we show the world what amazing BAs we are. Thank you for an amazing evening, everybody. We hope to see you in our next session of Tools and Technique Thursday. Don't forget to register for IIBA Summit 2022. It promises to be an exciting one. Thank you, everyone, once again for your presence. Have a great evening.
Thank you very much, everybody. Have a lovely night.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.